This video is to explain TGRWA's formatting for calculation packages. I'm going to be explaining how to set this up with various programs, primarily Bluebeam, but also Word, TEDS, and RISA. There's also some components of AutoCAD that can be used, and it can be used with any of our programs. So one of the things that we've seen in the past is calculations being set up where when we go from page to page, we don't have anything in the header. We just have our letterhead. What we want to have in our calculation packages is our calculation header on the top of each sheet. Each sheet should be 8.5 by 11, and the information in the header should be filled out. What we want to have in the header for the information, the engineer that did the calculations is who it's by. Checked is whoever the PM is. If there is no PM and it's strictly the signing engineer, would be the signing principal. At a bare minimum, show the client, the project, and a calculation item or section is optional if you want to put that in. But at a bare minimum, client and project should be in there. There should also be the project number, date, and sheet number. And we'll get into sheet numbering as we go along. So we have a couple of different things in our system for calculations. One thing that we have is in Word, in our templates in Word, we have a template called TGRWA Calculation Package, which has a cover sheet and has 2 pages started for the calculations. There's also 2 other things that these are single pages that are typically used if you want to just do a single page calculation and don't need to have all the rest of the information. So in Word, you can go File, New, you can go to Custom, and then TGRWA Templates, and find the calculation package. And again, it has the startings of a cover sheet, which fill in the information that you need. Make sure we put in a job number. This it starts off with 2 pages to show that when you go from one page to another, it will have the header on top. It's also started off to have sheet numbering. Sheet numbering starts after the cover page. So I've started a set of calculations here that is just going to be a sample set of calculations. It's going to be a beam that will be designed for composite and also for non-composite. The subject of the calculations is really irrelevant. I'm not going over what we need to have from the standpoint of what data we want to have in here. It's not about content. This is just more about format. So on the first page here, I put in an objective and I put in what codes we're using, what the loads are, and filled in some information in here in the header. So to get into the header, you double click into the header. I'm going to make this view so that it's a page width. And you can add information into each one of these lines. The sheet numbers, I typically, when I do my numbering, I like to put a C in front of it, just a prefix in front of the calculation number. You don't have to necessarily. If you do put something in, make sure that you don't delete this field. This is a smart field that will continue to number. As we go along, you also may find that when we're putting together the calculations, maybe you don't want to have a number in there to start off with because we're going to end up writing over it. So the calculations can actually all be done and set up within Word. If you really want to be that ambitious, you can bring in TEDS calculations into Word. You can bring in screenshots of things into Word if you wanted to do it all in Word. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the right way to do it, but that is an option. So the next thing that I did here is I went down and I put in just a couple of separators for some sections that we're going to have. I don't typically change sheet numbering as I go from section to section. I like to have a continuous set of numbers, 1 through whatever the end of the calculations are. On large sets of calculations, if it makes sense to have subsections, that's fine. As long as if you do that, I recommend that you use the prefix for your sheet number, and you can then have section A 1 through 10 and B 1 through 20. Preferably just start from 1 and go to the end. So I've got three different dividers here for this set. So then the next thing that I wanted to do was put together a RISA model. So I actually did a RISA model. If this is just a simple beam, I created some graphics that show in the model. I have the simple beam showing the member number and the node numbers. I think with our computer models, we should always include the model that shows member numbers, node numbers. If it's a big model, you may need to do this in multiple pages. It may make sense to do just the member numbers on one set of documents and the node numbers on another, clearly showing what the boundary conditions are. I also have some with loading. And then on this particular model, I have the member design. So I know we typically use this for the sample calcs that we're submitting. And then I also have the input and output. It is my recommendation that for the models that we put together, that we include the input and the output so that a reviewer can easily review what's in the model, what the boundary conditions are, what the loading is, and if there's something that they want to request or they want to look into in the output, they can find that. Okay, so then what we need to do to create this calc package is we need to have things in a PDF form. So these have all been put together and printed out as PDFs. To put the header in the top of this document, we're going to need some space on the top. So the first thing that I'm going to do with all of these things is I'm going to combine these into one piece. So I'm going to take the graphics that I have here and copy them all into one document. This one too. Okay, so we have these 5 sheets that are in one of the PDFs. We need to make some space up at the top. So to do that, we go to document, we go to page setup. We're going to do that for all 5 of these sheets. And I'm going to scale this down. So I'm just going to take a stab at saying 80%. Then I'm going to move this. It looks like it probably could get a little bit bigger and we could still fit this in here. That should be about right to be able to get the header up in the top. We have a stamp. Everyone should have a stamp in their stamp folder that is called TGRWA Calc Header. So I'm going to put this in here and just make sure that this looks about right. Make sure that I've gotten everything. So that looks like that will do just fine when we put this all together. But right now I'm going to delete this. And then I'm going to go to the report. So this was the report information that we got from RISA, and it has header information up in the top. It's got some information down in the footer, which has page numbers. And again, when someone's doing a review of our calculations, it's good for them to be able to refer to one page number, and we want to have our information up in the top. So we need to block this stuff out. So to do that, we'll put a rectangle in over this, and what I've done for this rectangle is I've made it so that the fill is white and the line is white, so it writes over this. And then I'm going to do another one down on the bottom. And then I'm going to select both of these items, and I'm going to apply them to each one of the pages. It's going to go to pages 1 through 7. So you can see over here, it wrote over those items. We're all good. As we go from page to page, everything's nice and clear up on the top. So we've got the rectangle up here. One of the things we want to make sure that you do now is flatten this document so that anything else that you put in doesn't end up behind this. If you put in page numbers, when we get to the page numbering portion, page numbers would actually always end up behind this piece. There's nothing that you can do to get it in front unless you flatten this. So we'll go to document, flatten. I'm going to flatten everything. You can leave it so that you can unflatten it. You never know if you're going to need to unflatten something. If you turn this off, then the change becomes permanent. And then I'm just going to save this. So I'm going to take all of these sheets now and copy those into this other graphics portion that I had. All right, so there's a section of the calculations that we will end up, when we assemble everything, that we'll end up putting into the document. I go back to the Word document that I have here. I wanted to have a section where I was picking out some composite deck. So I have the deck sheets here that we should be able to find. Yeah, so this is the deck. I just opened up the deck book. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extract the sheet that I'm going to use. I'm going to use a lightweight concrete deck. So I'm going to take just the one piece that I'm going to use, and I'm going to extract this page, and I will save it in my folder that I'm currently using. Okay, so again, we're going to want to put this onto one of our sheets. So we will need to shrink this down. So similar to what we did before, we're going to go to document. We're going to go to page setup. And we're going to scale this down, move it around. Okay, and if you are picking something out of a catalog, it's always good to put in some lines or a box around what it is that you're selecting. So I'm going to put a rectangle. My rectangle that I have right now is solid, so I'm going to make that so that it's not. And I'm going to use the 5 1/4 18 gauge. It's a 10-foot span, so I'm going to take that right there. so you can see what it is that we use. So we can now take the next section, which what I'll do now is I will take the Word document that I have here, and I'm going to print it so that we can start inserting pieces into this PDF. So I'm going to just print it as a PDF, which I can do from up here. I already have one started, so I'm just going to call this sample 1. Okay, so I've got everything that I wanted to have in here, right? I've got the cover sheet and the beginnings of some things. So I'm going to start doing some of the assembling right now. So I'm going to go back to this, take this and put it in after the composite. There we go. And then the next thing was the non-composite beam design. So this is what I did in RISA. So I'm going to take this graphics document that I had here that has all of these things assembled and copy those in. Okay. So just to have some things closed, I'm gonna save some of these things and close them. Okay, one of the other things that I just wanted to show is if you do something by hand, if you do a hand calc or a hand sketch or something, you can scan that. So here I've got a scan of just a partial plan of the bay that I'm looking at, and I also did a loading for that on this. So this is on calc paper. We'll probably end up writing over this calc paper, but we don't necessarily have to if everything is in there correct. So we take this and copy, and I'm just going to put that right after the loading information. So a couple of scan sheets that we put in here, a separator, something we pulled out of a catalog, another separator, a bunch of information from RISA. Then I got a composite beam design. So what I've done for that is I did a TEDS calculation. So in TEDS, you should also have the header in TEDS. If you, for some reason, if you don't have that header, you can go to options and you can go to document and change your default document template. Hit select, go to TGRWA, and there should only be one document in there. Use that, and it should open up and populate. In TEDS, you have to utilize some of the fields that they have. So if I go up into header now and see what they have, so the job number is the job number, calc date, calcs by, check by. You can put a prefix in front of the calculation and then a starting page number. Project, structure, part. Those are the structure is just the third line down, and part is the fourth line down. So as I said before, we want to put in the client, we want to put in the project for sure, and the other things can be filled in if you want. Also, as I said, you can do these things all in Word, and I could actually take this calculation and bring it into Word so that it gets assembled in Word, and you can have multiple TEDS calculations in Word to kind of have almost everything in there. It's relatively straightforward, and it's worth trying, but I'm not going to show that right now. So I've already done this and run the calculation. I'm just going to go ahead and print this. It is a blue beam. And I'll put it right there in the sample. And now I'm going to take these calculations here. And I am going to put them into our package here. All right, so now they're in. Let's close this. And then the last thing that I'm going to show is, you know, if you wanted to do a sketch in AutoCAD, we do have a template in AutoCAD. It is in the C drive, program files, Autodesk, AutoCAD drawings down here, and it's called TGRWA Calc Sheet. I created and described a typical detail of a composite beam, composite slab information, filled in the information up here, and I have already printed a PDF of this. And that's right here. I'm going to take that and I'm going to put that into my calculation. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Close off again some of this stuff. So now what we want to do is we've got a couple of different things going on here. We've got a header from the scanned in calculation sheets. We've got a header from the Word document. Another header from the Word document. We've got some blanks. And then we've got a header down here from the AutoCAD document. So we can do a couple of different things. We can leave this first one as is if we want to, knowing that that's the first page. That's fine. We can also put another white rectangle over this and create a new header going all the way through. That's what I'm going to do. When I created the TEDS PDF, I set it up so that this was going to be on page C20, because I knew from doing this previously that this would actually be on C20. I'm going to go ahead and write over this time to run through it, but I could just assemble it starting from a certain point going forward. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to again put in a rectangle up here. I'm going to apply this to pages, and I'm going to do a custom range. I'm going to go 2 through 24. And then I'm just going to go down and make sure nothing strange got covered up. Caught a little bit there, so we can. Maybe because it went too much that way, maybe I'll go ahead and start back with this, put in a rectangle, and just make it a little bit smaller, and apply it all. And you can play with this. Check these. Did I catch anything? Yeah, some of these got to be too big. So if you do this, you want to go through and make sure you don't write over anything. If we undo all the way back, one of the things I could do here is only put this on the sheets that need it, because we had already done the white rectangle on several of these. So why don't I go ahead and do that? And so here we would do that's one of the things that you'll find when you apply to each one of the pages. You know, you're bringing this in from several different types of programs, whether it's a scan or it's printed out of Word or coming off of another document or coming out of an analysis program. Things are all going to look a little bit differently. So it's always good to check this stuff so that we don't write over something that we intended to have on the calcs. And actually what I'm going to do here, just to show how this works, is I'm gonna stop. I believe that this should be right. It might actually be the wrong page number. So I'll just do this right here. This will cover all of these. Now this one I know, because it was all set up the same, it should cover everything here if I apply this and I do this as a custom range and I go through 19 through 24. I'm going to do 19 through 23 because that last one I put in was an AutoCAD drawing. All right, so the big thing here with putting these things in is to remember to flatten this, because if you don't flatten this when we do one of our next steps, it will be behind that rectangle. Okay, so now what we'll do here is we will put in a stamp with the calc header. Move it into the right position. And then I'm going to fill in this information here. So this is just done using text, a text box. I want to make sure I have that all right. Yeah, that's all okay. Okay, and if you if you want to make these things line up, you can select these two using the shift and right click and align left. It gets that all lined up. Everything over. Okay, so We have all this information. We've got the calc header and the header information all up here. So now we're just going to select these things. I want to make sure that I caught the stamp. I'm going to group them. So it's one thing to select. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the sheet number. So this is going to be sheet C1. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to Document, Headers and Footers. I'm going to, this is going to be, again, a custom range. So it's going to go 2 through 24. So this sheet through the last sheet. I'm going to change this to Arial and 12. And over in the right header box, I'm going to put a C, and then page number. I want this format. I just want a single digit, and I want to start at page number. I'm actually going to start at page number 1. And then you can see right here, it's kind of hard to see where the C1 is, but it's right here above the date. To move that, I can use the top margin and the right margin. So when I increase the right margin, it moves this over. And when I increase the top margin, it moves up and down. It's about right there. So I'll say okay. Can go in here now, and it's off a little bit, so I can take this grouped bit of information I have here and just kind of put it up a little bit so that it looks right. So now when I go to the next page, I have the page number on here, but I don't have the stamp on here yet. I did it all on the first page so that I could get everything kind of lined up nice, and then I'm going to take that, select it, and I'm going to apply to pages, and I'm going to do custom range where I go 2 through 24. And if everything worked right, it should all be the TGRWA calculation cover sheet or diagrams. I probably should have dropped it down a little bit further when I did it. So that just, it's easy enough to check when you're first in the document, and you can drop in a calc stamp just to check it. But as I go down through it, everything looks like it's in order. And I've got one set of calculations, 8.5 by 11, easy for someone to review and refer back to certain things. So this is the way that we want to have our calculations put together. Again, we really want to have the information up in the top so that it's easy for someone doing a review. They can refer to the sheet. They know what the job is for. We know who it's for if it's ever a single sheet that we're looking at. So that's how things should be done.